These are stories where love meets betrayal. Stories that make you see life a little differently.
It began with a phone call I wasn't supposed to answer. I was sitting in the kitchen, the clock above the sink blinking 1:37 a.m. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of that clock. The same rhythm that had filled the silence between us for months. The screen lit up with her name, Anna. Not just any Anna, my Anna. My best friend since college. The woman who had held my hand through every heartbreak, who knew every secret, who had been in our wedding photos, standing right beside me. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey," I whispered, "do you know what time it is?" There was a pause on the other end. Then I heard her breathing, uneven, shaky. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice didn't sound like hers. It was lower, cracked, the voice of someone who had carried a weight too heavy for too long. I didn't know it then, but that call was the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew. She didn't start with excuses. She didn't cry. She just said my husband's name. Once. And that was enough. My stomach dropped. The air around me felt thick, unreal. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear as if hearing less would somehow make it untrue. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said. And I could tell by the way her voice broke on the word mean, that it wasn't the first time she had said that sentence, just the first time she had said it to me. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not out of shock, but because my mind refused to choose what hurt more. The betrayal of the man I shared my bed with, or the betrayal of the woman who knew the shape of my soul. "How long?" I asked. I didn't recognize my own voice. It sounded calm, detached, like someone asking about the weather. "Almost a year," she whispered. "A year. A year of dinners, of laughter, of holidays together. A year of me standing between them, smiling, while they shared glances I never saw." And then she said it. The thing that split me in half. "I ended it, but I couldn't live with it anymore. You deserve to know." I almost laughed. Deserve to know. As if confession was some kind of gift. As if handing me the truth could somehow erase the rot beneath it. I didn't hang up. I didn't scream. I just sat there, watching the seconds flicker on the clock, feeling the weight of something inside me quietly rearrange itself. And in that stillness, that unbearable calm, I understood what she hadn't said. She hadn't called for forgiveness. She had called for absolution. But I wasn't God, and I had no mercy left to give. When the call ended, the silence was almost kind. The house felt unfamiliar, like a crime scene after everyone's gone. I sat there until the first light of morning touched the window, and then I made a decision. If she wanted a confession, I would give her one too, but mine wouldn't come with tears or apologies. Mine would come with truth, the kind that changes everything. And that was how it began. 3 days passed before I called her back. I didn't plan to. I told myself I'd let her live with the weight of what she'd done. Let her wonder if I'd ever say her name again. But silence can be crueler than rage. And maybe a part of me wanted to see her face when the truth stood between us like a ghost we both created. So I called. My voice was steady. "Let's meet." There was a pause, and then a whisper. "Where?" "The cafe near the river. Tomorrow, noon." I heard her exhale, almost a sob. Okay. The next day, the city was washed in gray, the kind of light that makes everything look older, sadder. I arrived early. The cafe was quiet. A few empty tables, a woman reading by the window. I chose a seat by the wall so I could see the door when she walked in. And when she did, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller. Her hair, once perfectly styled, hung loose around her face. She wore no makeup, and her hands trembled as she took off her coat. "Hi," she said softly, sitting down across from me. I just nodded. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of spoons clinking against coffee cups around us, and the low hum of quiet conversations. "Finally," she said. "I didn't expect you to come." I wasn't sure I would. I couldn't keep lying. It was killing me. I looked at her, the woman who had been my mirror for years, my friend, my sister in everything but blood. And all I could think was how little I knew her now. "Did you love him?" I asked. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then she nodded, once. That simple gesture hurt more than any confession could, because love, real or imagined, meant there was something between them that wasn't just weakness or lust. It meant I had lost something I could never get back. She reached for my hand. I pulled it away. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't make this about your guilt." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry. I wish I could undo it." I looked at her for a long time, and then I said, "You already did. Every time you smiled at me, every time you looked me in the eye and lied." Her shoulders trembled. I know I don't deserve forgiveness." "Good," I said, "because I'm not offering it." She looked up, surprised. There was no hatred in my voice, only clarity. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind, imagined shouting, crying, breaking things, but the truth was quieter, colder. I leaned closer. "Do you want to know something, Anna?" She nodded slowly. I smiled, not cruelly, but with the kind of calm that comes after a storm. "You weren't the only one he lied to." Her face changed. Confusion first, then fear. "What do you mean?" I let the silence stretch. Sometimes silence says everything words can't. Then I said, he wasn't faithful to you either. Her lips parted, her breath caught. I could almost hear her heart breaking. That fragile sound I'd known so well. I watched her crumble, and for the briefest moment, I felt something that could have been satisfaction or maybe pity. They're not so different, those two. She covered her mouth with her hand. Tears ran down her cheeks. Who? She whispered. It doesn't matter, I said, but I thought you should know. You weren't special. You were just next. And she looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. And maybe she was, because in that moment, I wasn't the woman she had betrayed. I was the one holding the truth like a weapon. We sat there for a long time after that. Two women bound by the same man's lies, staring at each other across a table that once held laughter and secrets and wine. When I finally stood, I said quietly, "This is the last time we see each other." She nodded, unable to speak. As I walked away, I felt the wind hit my face. Sharp, clean, almost merciful. And for the first time since that call, I could breathe again. But freedom, I learned, has its own price. And I hadn't paid mine yet. For a while, I thought silence would save me. After the meeting, I'd stopped answering messages, stopped explaining, stopped remembering. I deleted numbers, blocked names, cleaned the house until my hands bled, as if scrubbing the walls could erase what had happened inside them. But silence doesn't heal. It only hides the sound of what's still breaking. For a while, I thought silence would save me. After the meeting, I stopped answering messages, stopped explaining, stopped remembering. I deleted numbers, blocked names, cleaned the house until my hands bled, as if scrubbing the walls could erase what had happened inside them. But silence doesn't heal. It only hides the sound of what's still breaking. I looked at him, the man who had promised forever. The man who couldn't even keep a single truth straight. And I said, enough. He tried to reach for me. I stepped back. It wasn't anger anymore. It was distance. A kind of emptiness that comes when you've spent all your emotions and have nothing left to give. He whispered, "I made a mistake." I almost laughed, because mistakes are forgetting an anniversary or saying something you don't mean. This wasn't that. This was a choice, repeated over and over. After that, we stopped pretending. We lived in the same space like ghosts, breathing the same air, but haunting different rooms. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about Anna. Not with hatred, but with a kind of morbid fascination. How could two women love the same man and see two completely different versions of him? Who who was he, really? And who was I, if I could love someone capable of that? One night, I couldn't sleep. The city outside was asleep, but my mind was loud. So I got up, sat by the window, and opened my phone. There it was, a message from her, unread, from a week ago. I don't know how to live with what I did. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part wanted to reply. Instead, I just typed, "Then don't live with it. Live beyond it," and hit send. And that was the last thing I ever said to her. The next day, I left the apartment, packed one suitcase, took nothing sentimental, just clothes, a notebook, my passport. I didn't even tell him I was leaving. He'd notice when the silence got too big to ignore. I rented a small house by the sea. Nothing special, just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't demand answers. And there, for the first time in months, I slept. But peace is never permanent. It's like low tide. It always returns, dragging the past back to shore. A few weeks later, I got another call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, that old, destructive instinct, made me swipe right. It was her sister, her voice trembling. She said Anna was gone. Gone. A word too small for what it meant. I asked how. There was silence. Then, she took her own life. I didn't cry. Not at first. Grief is strange when it comes tangled with betrayal. It doesn't know where to sit. In your chest, your throat, or your guilt. I sat there for a long time, phone still in my hand, trying to understand what part of me had just died with her. Because she had called for forgiveness, and I gave her truth instead. And maybe that truth was too heavy for her to carry. That night, I walked to the edge of the sea. The wind was sharp, the water black. I whispered her name once, and the waves swallowed it whole. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not sorrow, just the terrible, quiet weight of the price. The price of knowing, the price of speaking, the price of surviving when someone else couldn't. I understood. Forgiveness isn't something you give. It's something you outlive. I thought the sea would take everything away. The memories, the faces, the echoes of that apartment. But the truth always finds its way back. Even silence has a sound when it's been earned the hard way. Mine sounded like waves. Endless, patient waves breaking the same shore again and again. A month passed. Maybe 2. I lost track. Some mornings, I didn't even open the curtains. I just watched the light move across the wall and tried to convince myself it was enough. Then one afternoon, the landlady brought me mail. A letter. No name, just my initials. written in handwriting I didn't recognize. I almost threw it away, but something about the way the ink had bled into the paper stopped me. Inside was a photo, black and white, a woman, young, fragile, standing in front of a bookstore. And on the back, a single line. "You don't know me, but I think he's doing it again." The world seemed to tilt. I read it again and again. Every word burned like it had been waiting for me. I didn't need to ask who he was. There was only ever one man who left this kind of ruin behind. I tried to ignore it. I told myself, not my problem, not anymore. But the mind doesn't obey logic when it's tasted betrayal. It hunts patterns. It wants to warn. It wants to save. 2 days later, I found her, the girl from the photo. Her name was Sophia. She worked at a small art gallery, all white walls and empty promises. I didn't introduce myself at first. I just watched. She laughed too easily, moved like someone who hadn't learned yet that people can destroy you with love. But when I saw him walk in, that same slow confidence, that practiced smile, I felt my stomach tighten. It was like watching a movie I already knew the ending of. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and just didn't care. He whispered something to her. She smiled, blushed, touched her hair. The scene was identical, down to the smallest gesture, like betrayal repeating itself through new actors. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat with my notebook, and for the first time, I started writing not about pain, but about prevention. The next morning, I went back to the gallery, waited until he left, then I walked up to her. She looked at me like I was a stranger, which I was. But in her eyes, I saw the reflection of who I used to be. I said, quietly, "Be careful with him." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I smiled, the kind of smile you give when you don't want to ruin someone's illusion. And I said, "He loves the chase, not the person." She stared at me for a moment, long enough to sense that I wasn't lying. But denial is powerful. It saves us before it destroys us. She thanked me and walked away. For a while, I felt foolish, like I had just spoken to a ghost version of myself, one that wasn't ready to listen yet. But 2 weeks later, another letter came, this one in her handwriting.
You were right. Just that. 3 words. No signature. And suddenly, I understood something that had taken me years to learn. We don't heal by punishing those who hurt us. We heal by warning the next person before it's too late. That's what I call forgiveness now. Not forgetting, not erasing, but transforming the pain into a map for someone else. The past still visits me sometimes, in dreams.
In the sound of a phone that doesn't ring anymore. But now, when it does, I don't run from it. I sit with it. I let it speak. Because some ghosts don't want revenge. They just want to be remembered with honesty. And maybe that's all I am now. A mirror that reflects the truth back at whoever dares to look close enough. I don't hate him anymore. That would mean I still care. He's just a story I once survived. And survival, that's the most beautiful kind of revenge there is. It had been 5 years. 5 winters, 5 cities, 5 different versions of me. Somewhere along the way, I stopped counting the distance between what I lost and what I became. The pain that once lived in my chest had turned into something quieter. A kind of wisdom that didn't ask for attention. I had built a life I liked. Simple. Uncomplicated. Morning coffee, long walks, work that didn't eat at my soul. I had friends who didn't ask about the past, and I was grateful for that. But healing is a strange thing. It always leaves one door half open, and one evening, the past walked right through it. It was at a conference. A crowded room full of polite laughter and practiced introductions. I was there to give a talk on storytelling and truth. Fitting, in a way. When I turned to leave the stage, I saw him, standing near the exit, smiling that same familiar smile that once made my world stop. For a heartbeat, it felt like no time had passed. But then the feeling faded, like a match burning out before it could hurt you. He looked older, tired, the kind of tired that no amount of rest can fix. Our eyes met. He hesitated, just enough for me to know he didn't expect to see me. Then he walked closer. "Hi," he said softly, like a man approaching a ghost. "Didn't think I'd ever run into you again." I smiled. It wasn't forced. It was calm. "Life's small that way," I said. He looked at me the way people look at something they once owned and can't anymore. There was recognition and something like regret. But not enough to make me care. "I listened to your podcast once," he said. "The one about betrayal." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" He laughed softly, uncomfortable. Guess I deserved some of that. I tilted my head. "You think it was about you?" He hesitated. "I mean, wasn't it?" I smiled again, slower this time. "No, it was about me, and how I stopped letting people like you define my story." He looked down. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, but he didn't. He just sighed, and that sigh said everything. He hadn't changed. He'd just aged. He asked if I wanted to get coffee. To catch up, he said. I looked at him for a long second, then simply said, "No." And I walked away. Not fast, not angry, just steady, certain. Outside, the night air was cool. The streetlights painted the pavement gold. I realized I wasn't shaking, not even a little. For years, I had imagined what I'd say if I ever saw him again. All the perfect words, all the ways I could make him understand what he took from me. But in the end, silence said everything. As I walked, I caught my reflection in a cafe window. And for a split second, I saw both versions of myself. The woman who once begged for an explanation, and the woman who no longer needed one. The difference was breathtaking, like watching a wound turn into a scar. Not pretty, maybe, but proof that healing happened. When I got home, I sat at my desk, opened my journal, and wrote a single line. Revenge isn't getting even. It's moving on so far, they can't even follow. I closed the notebook. No tears, no shaking hands, just peace. Sometimes I think about him still, but not with pain. He's just a shadow that helps me measure the light. And if he ever wonders what became of me, I hope he knows the answer. I became everything he thought I couldn't survive.
Sometimes pain doesn't come from enemies, but from the ones we trusted the most. Maybe that's how life teaches us to see the truth. Could you forgive such a betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. More stories are coming, stories that will touch your heart.